Drop in the untold stories of industry leaders, influencers, and insights on future innovation. I'm John Davidson, and this is the DLC Drop Podcast. Welcome, everybody, to the DLC Drop Podcast. It is my pleasure to welcome my good friend Gabrielle Bosche. She's a millennial motivator, best-selling author of 5 books, including The Purpose Factor, Get It Anywhere, Books Are Sold, is what I'm told. Is this accurate?
It's completely accurate, yeah.
Wonderful. She's also president of Millennial Solution and co-founder of the Purpose Company. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So one of the fun things that I love to do as we're starting these episodes with people who are good friends of mine is telling stories of how we met. So I'm curious, this is what I'd like to do. I'll tell my version of it.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, that's great.
And then you tell your version of it.
Perfect. Yeah, you should definitely start.
Oh, let's see. Okay, so I had moved to Sacramento recently.
Oh, we're going way. Wow, you're really starting at the beginning. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Didn't want to interrupt.
Somebody I met was like, hey, John, do you want to go to a concert? I was like, sure, always down for concerts. He's like, cool, I've got these 2 girls that are coming, so the 4 of us can go. And so I was like, all right, that sounds pretty good so far. So we go and, I think I walked into his apartment and first thing I saw was red hair, to be clear. And, was like, okay, where are we going? We hop in the car. I don't think it was clear, too, like who was with who, which was
It was a very
random.
Confusing situation. Yeah, it's like, is this a double date or are we all just, strangers going to this anonymous concert because no one told us what the concert was.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we're like, what is the concert going to be? And it's like, you'll see when you get there. You'll be hyped.
Well, it was free. So, both of us, I think we heard that and we were both pretty broke college kids. So we're like, absolutely free entertainment.
Free music?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little did we know.
I call that the radio. So we roll up and it turns out it's Yanni, which...
Did you know who Yanni was before we went to that concert?
I knew, based on memes,
Well, sure.
I knew the double piano.
Right.
And the mustache.
Right, yeah.
But the mustache was missing.
Which made it extremely confusing.
I was like, this is why it's free. This is why it's free. The caterpillar had crawled away.
It was really unfortunate.
And then, so based on that hilarious experience,
right.
I remember there were some old ladies behind us, and they're like in love with Yanni.
Right.
And we're just like...
They hadn't met you yet, John.
Well, give it time. And so that was, I think, the first time, and we exchanged numbers, and we're like, you're awesome, I'm awesome. I think you said that.
Naturally, yeah.
Yeah. And then we became friends. And I was thinking about this the other day. That was about, how many years ago? 12?
At least.
I know.
It's so funny because you meet people who are older, because now we can kind of say that, unfortunately.
Ish.
And they'd be like, it's all mental, right? And like, oh yeah, I remember I've been friends with them for 20 years or for 15 years. And it's so funny because there are very few people that I can go back and say, yes, I've actually been friends with this person for that long. And I think that you're definitely one of them. And so it's pretty funny when you actually look back and count back the numbers, man, before we came on, I was like, oh, I saw a picture of us at my college graduation and haven't changed a bit.
Which you graduated before I did, but
He still hasn't graduated yet.
I'm trying to figure out the math there. Haven't quite figured it out.
Yeah.
And
different paths.
And you've just moved to Dallas.
I did. In March.
In March, right before the shutdown.
Yep.
Welcome.
Thank you.
It's super cool that we're in the same city now, even though we're so
I've been
busy that
following
we
you. Yeah.
never see each other.
Yeah. Started off in Sacramento. We both had little detours, and here we are in Dallas.
Right. And so that's what I'd love to talk about is, so I came to Dallas. Before that, I had moved all around the country skateboarding. But what was your next stop after Sacramento?
Oh, my goodness. So in Sacramento, I actually got into politics because I was the typical millennial wanting to change the world. And so I was like, absolutely, I'm getting into politics and government, and realized that I was more of the problem than the solution. And I think I got into government, too, because my parents are both entrepreneurs. So I grew up in a pretty exciting / volatile kind of environment where, I remember going on vacation with them, and then it would, payroll wasn't, happening, or my mom would be late picking me up from school for 3 hours because she's like, hey, something happened with the accountant. So I just remember that world. And so I was like, what is the opposite of an entrepreneur? And I was like, perfect, a government employee.
Yeah.
And tried that for a bit. really did enjoy it. I mean, I was an education consultant, so I got to do all kind of the geeky stuff that I enjoy doing. But my boss decided to not run for election again, which in political speak means unemployed. So that kind of created an opportunity for me to reevaluate and experience what I call the quarter life crisis. When you're in your 20s and you're like, what am I doing? Is this what I want to do forever? If I wake up in 10 years and I'm still here, am I going to be happy or disappointed?
Yeah.
So naturally, I moved to Virginia Beach.
As
sight
anybody
unseen.
does.
Right. Yeah. Naturally, that's what one does. And it was just this really crazy turn of events where this guy had seen, I think we got connected at a conference and reached out and said, hey, we're starting this media entity for millennials to get involved in politics. And are you interested? And those are like my two jams. I was like, millennials and politics, let's do it. Yeah. And moved to Virginia Beach. Turned out later that the guy who was starting this company actually had told everyone we were in a relationship. So that was awkward. And
was there a balloon ride involved?
There was not a balloon ride, which that's a whole other conversation, maybe for later. But yeah, almost as bad. He had actually made this sign. So I landed in the airport in Virginia Beach in Norfolk, and I come down the escalator, and he's standing there with this sign that he had hand drawn, and it said, "Welcome home, Gabby." And at the time, I was really into leopard, which was probably a thing when we were still hanging out. Like all of my suitcases were leopard. It was a little over the top.
Sounds vaguely remember.
Too much.
Yeah.
He had hand-drawn little leopard spots inside of my name on this sign that he had created.
Do you still have the sign?
It has not made it. The 6 other moves, so somehow it's ended up in the trash. But
bummer.
And there were roses involved, and I just found out later that he had been telling everyone we were in this relationship. It was awkward, to say the least. So that startup that I was supposed to be a part of didn't go anywhere. Like I landed in like the next week. They were like, yeah, I don't really think that this is a thing. So I'm across.
Was it just the two of you to start, or were there other?
There were other people
okay.
as well. Yeah. Or at least that's what he told me. So that way I moved across the country. No, I'm just kidding. There were people, and I'm still very close friends with some of the other folks that are in it. Cool. But I was finishing up my master's.
But no longer in a relationship with this.
We broke up after the relationship that wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
And I just remember kind of having to reevaluate, like, okay, well, I thought that I was going to start this kind of new season of doing media, because that was another thing that I always had wanted to do.
Sure.
And I think a lot of times when you're young too, you have kind of this, I call it the princess in the castle kind of idea that you're just going to sit and wait, and someone's eventually going to come discover you. Like, oh my gosh, eventually someone's going to make the connection, or someone's going to see the talent that I am, or someone's going to give me the podcast, or someone's going to tell me to write the book. And that's going to be it. And I think sometimes we do that because it sounds better that someone discovered us, because we don't want to be, this like, self-promoting type person that's always trying to put ourselves out there. But
I have another semi-opinion on that.
Yeah.
Which is, I think I'm a big believer that there's no big breaks.
Sure.
There's steps that may result in a breakthrough, but I think it's easier for us to believe that there's a business lottery out there, that I just have to get in front of the right person, or I have to make the right connection. In fact, my mom met somebody the other day, an Uber driver who she gave my phone number to. She's like,
can you have your mom on the show?
I
think you should.
Okay. Well,
she's pretty awesome.
We'll pencil that in with the producers. Thank you.
Putting that in the suggestion box.
Yeah. Great suggestion, Gabby. Thanks for that. Mom, I hope you're listening. Love you. So, but it's easier to believe because it's kind of out of your control, and you're just hoping.
Yeah.
And if you don't get your big break, there's some mentality like it's not your fault.
Of course. Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, well, they just didn't discover me yet. Or it's pure luck, and some people get it and some don't.
Yep.
Where I think the truth is no, you got to grind every single day. And I remember I used to work at this design studio, and every once in a while we'd have a big project. Like we did a global campaign for Nike, and we're like, when people see this is going to really boost our brand and everything. It didn't. I mean, it's a great portfolio piece, and it's another talking point to reach out to more people. But I think, and obviously there's exceptions to the rule, but there's very, very few times that it's actually you did this one thing, or you met this one person and it catapulted you.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't think you really know what that breakthrough moment could be. Like they say, it takes you a decade to have one of those overnight successes. And I totally agree. I think a lot of times people, especially whether they're going into business or they're, working inside of a company themselves, I think a lot of people put so much in the hands of other people, like what you're talking about. So like we talk a lot about purpose. And one of the things I think people do is they put purpose inside of other people's hands. So soft sell for my book, The Purpose Factor. But I think a big part of that is because you're right that people don't want to be held liable if it doesn't work out. So we're all just protecting our egos against disappointment. And so we're like, well, I didn't really want it that bad, or they didn't see me for who I was, or the economy was really crappy, or, fill in the blank for the excuse. Yeah. Rather than taking ownership, I think, of kind of the process itself.
I used to have a really kind of self-sabotage type of a thing going back years where I wouldn't try hard because there was something in my mind that if I tried hard and I failed, like it said something negative about me that I didn't want to believe. But if I didn't really try, then, I didn't try. So, of course, I didn't achieve it. Yep. And when I was in high school and I was a sponsored skater and I go to Portland to visit my brother in college, he'd be telling everybody, oh, my younger brother's an amazing skateboarder and stuff like that. And he'd like tee me up like, on the top of this mountain for everybody to see me skate. And then I would roll up and I would just skate a little bit because I felt all this pressure. Sure. And then later I found this in business as well, which is like, what if I go after these pitches and they say no to me and everything? And then I had a kind of epiphany not too long ago. It was actually my mom who's going to be on the podcast. We just found out.
Just booked.
Yeah. And I was going to pitch a major shoe brand for me to lead esports for them. And it was before I planned to start DLC, and I was going to pitch myself as an employee of theirs. My mom, who's more practical than I am, sometimes I see the world a little too glass half full. But she said, how exciting that will be just to try. And that blew my mind because I was like everything up until that point had always been focused on the result, not the process.
Sure.
And I think too, with anything you want to do, especially the harder it is, you have to fall in love with the process because that's more of your life than the result.
Sure. Yeah.
That you can celebrate one time if that moment happens, but what you're doing in and out every day is like, do you enjoy developing the pitch or developing the program and pitching it, things of that nature.
Yeah. And I think Shark Tank has kind of changed a lot of people's perspectives, even on putting your purpose in someone else's hands or that breakthrough in someone else's hands, where I have so many people. I mean, I've had my own business since I was 23. Yeah. And so 2 years ago. No, I'm just kidding. Now that I'm in my 30s, I can like make old person jokes. Okay. Yeah. And I think a lot of people who want to go into business for themselves are like, well, I just need an investor, or I just need to have someone who's going to discover me, or I just need someone who's going to see me for who I am. And then they're going to do the legwork to bring in the finance team and the marketers and the copywriters and the branding people. And I'll just show up with my great idea. But that's not how it works. Right. At all, as you are experiencing rather quickly. And just I think, found out. Right. And I think that's the power, I think, of really understanding what value you provide, because when you fall in love with the process, but you also too have to fall in love with the transformation you provide to other people, because there's no other way you're going to push through the crap. Like the late hours, the grinding, the hustling, the pitching, the failures, the embarrassments. I mean, hustling is hard. It's called hustle for a reason. But if you don't fall in love with the transformation that you provide other people, then what's the point? Money comes and goes. You can make money, you can lose money, it'll be fine. But when you recognize that what you have inside of you will help other people, that makes it all worth it.
And that's the kind of the overlying purpose. And that's something that's really helped me, is my purpose is just helping people. And, I just see, I want to love people and I want to help them in any way that I can. And then I evaluated, okay, well, how do I spend most of my time? Mm-hmm. I spend most of my time working. So how can I help people within my work? Yep. Well, it doesn't always have to be some life-changing thing. It can be, I can help esports fans have a better experience, unforgettable memories. Like, sure. That's a super cool thing that I could do within this. I can help brands create effective campaigns that effectively engage a community, which will result in ROI and sales of these things. And then the way I do that increases the experience for that community. And as I think of these like overarching purposes, I think sometimes we get stuck in kind of lower purposes of like, let's say skateboarding. Okay, I love skateboarding. Well, if I work at a skate shop, I'm just selling shoes and gripping boards for kids, which I hate doing that, by the way. So that would be terrible.
I won't ask you to do that for me then.
Thank you. Grip your own skateboard, Gabby.
Got it. All right.
But, you know, like a lot of times we say, oh, my passion is soccer or baseball or whatever. And you end up doing something around that, but you're doing something that you hate.
Yeah.
But it's not anywhere near your passion. And so I think or your purpose. So I think like having a higher level purpose that you can filter things in makes a lot of sense.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, purpose, how we define purpose is just what you have inside of you to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really what it's all about. But it's understanding how you uniquely help people. So just saying I help people, we call that the Miss America answer. Like, of course you do, right? Like most people say, oh yeah, I want to help people. Like, okay, do you want to help me? Well, now I know you don't want to help me grip my board, so bummer. Or help me move or help me paint. I mean, most people will say, I want to help people until you ask them to help. And then they're like, but not in that way. And that's why I think understanding your purpose is so important, because you have a unique story. You've overcome unique things. You have a unique skill set. And it's really getting clarity about how all those fit together.
Right.
And so what I love asking people, like if I'm at coffee with someone or I just have a quick little exchange and someone's like, I want to know my purpose, I'll always ask them, what have you overcome?
To pay for this dinner.
Right? Yeah, that's right.
Let's start there.
Like, hold on, this is on you, right? Yeah. But I'll oftentimes ask them, what have you overcome that you can help other people overcome?
Oh, that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
So it could be an eating disorder. It could be starting a business for yourself. It could be how to redecorate or rebuild after a broken marriage. I mean, so many of us have skills that we don't even recognize that we have.
Absolutely.
That we've had to learn how to cope, overcome, and survive.
Because you've lived it.
Exactly. And there are people out there who need that. And that's, I think, one of the core foundations of any business. If you want to write a book, that's one of the best answers, questions to ask to find the answer of what kind of book you want to write. If you're trying to figure out what to do next with your life. I mean, it's such a cornerstone question to really consider. What have I overcome that I can help other people overcome?
Yeah, another thing that somebody I used to work with at GameStop always told me, he said, your common sense is nobody else's common sense.
Right.
And I always struggle with that. I always believe that everybody knows everything I know and more. And so one of the ways that I failed in business pitching ideas internally at a big company was I didn't start further down the funnel enough.
Sure.
So, because I was like, oh, everybody knows this stuff.
Yep.
So I'm starting here. And then nobody was getting my ideas.
Sure.
Or the need for them. And so what you're talking about with purpose and everything is, you know, we can believe, oh, everybody knows this stuff. I'm not like special in any way. Like I'm not this person on TV or this podcast or whatever. Like I'm just a normal person. Well, I think we should not discount ourselves so much.
Also, all of those people are normal people too. I think we accept you, of course.
I mean, I have my own podcast.
That's right. Yeah. Big time. I think that a lot of times we look out there and I think comparison kills so much of our purpose off because we assume, well, they're so much farther ahead or there's already people in that space or why would someone want my product or service?
Yep.
Because you don't recognize your purpose. And I hear a lot of people talking about imposter syndrome. It's really big in the motivational space right now. And people are like, I suffer from imposter syndrome. Like, oh, I don't really deserve it. Or if they really only knew. But I actually think that that's total crap. Okay. I think imposter syndrome really simply means that you don't know your purpose. You can't be an imposter on yourself when you're yourself.
Yeah, two things I've thought about that. I heard Gary Vaynerchuk said on a recent piece of content, one of the many. Yeah. He said, recognize that everybody else sucks too.
Sure.
And that has helped me so much because, you know, there's some things that I'm like, I don't know this or I don't, you know, doing my own company. Like, how am I going to do this? Right. Sure. Like there's some things I'm confident in, but there's so much I haven't done yet. And just saying, okay, everybody else is in the same boat. I think is something that's just really helped me.
Oh, I think it's so helpful because, and I talk to a lot of people who want to start their own business because what we do at the Purpose Company is we help people first discover their purpose and then apply it to figure out what to do next. Right. So we help people start businesses or start coaching companies, write books, really figure out how do you put your purpose at work in the marketplace in a really practical way. And it's so funny because people will come to me and say, well, there are already so many other coaches or consultants or companies that do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And yes, the market is flooded. It's always competitive at the bottom, but it's always lonely at the top.
Okay.
So if you're willing to do the work to be the best and to actually develop an expertise around something, because if you're just helping someone a little bit, then you're just going to get a little bit of fulfillment, a little bit of income, a little bit of happiness. But if you help people a lot, if before someone meets you, they're one way, and then after they're totally different, they have a better house because you sold them a great house if you're a realtor. They are, healthier because you're a health coach and you help them make better life decisions or help feed their family differently. Right. Every single business is in the business of transformation. And the better you get at transforming people, taking them from A to B, the more happy, the more fulfilled, and the more in line with your purpose that you're going to be.
Yeah, and it sounds like you had a very specific moment sitting in an audience a long time ago that helped you realize.
It wasn't that long ago, just for the record.
Right. I mean, probably a couple of years ago. I mean, you're 23, so how long ago could it be?
I know, it's true.
But so, founding Millennial Solution, if I have that right. Mm-hmm. So what was it? Tell me about that scenario, and then what was it that took you, what did you do to take the next steps to propel yourself forward?
Yeah, I think we all will have a crisis of purpose in our lives. Some people, that crisis is thrust upon us through maybe the death of a family member or a divorce or a job layoff. Some people choose that crisis because they're so unhappy or uncomfortable where they're at that they wake up and they're like, I can't do this another day. I know I'm made for more.
Right.
So that's kind of where I was at. Is I had an okay job as a fundraiser at a nonprofit. Another career I wasn't great at. I was like the worst fundraiser ever.
I've had a few careers.
I was like, if you want to give, you totally can. If you don't want to, totally fine. I think
worst fundraiser ever.
Yeah, it was the worst. Yeah, I was like so apathetic. I was like, if you want to
not give.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, you clearly don't need it. I was like, yeah, you're right. Probably a good decision. You should save your money.
But they didn't reject you.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember I was at this fundraising conference. I was in Hawaii. My mom was with me. She learned how to tag along on quite a few of these trips. And I remember I was at this conference and there's someone up on stage talking about millennials. And at the time, I've always been really passionate about millennials. I always really felt drawn to helping my generation figure out what to do with their lives and get clarity. And I had no idea where to start. I was like, this is what I'm passionate about. But, if someone were to ask me, what are you passionate about 10 minutes later? Or if someone would have said, what's your purpose 10 minutes later, I would have been like, still trying to explain it. Which, if you can't explain your purpose in 60 seconds or less, you really don't know your purpose. So I had this passion, but I had no direction. And so I'm sitting in this audience. I'm sitting at the back. The guy at the front is speaking on millennials. And the whole time I'm thinking, I could be doing that. And I had this feeling in me, and I didn't know what it was. It felt like jealousy or envy because I hadn't ever clocked that kind of emotion before. It was almost like this vibration in me, but it wasn't jealousy or envy. It was almost like I was having a physical reaction to the reality that I was going to be stuck unless I did something. And so it manifests different ways for people. Some people have like a weird feeling in their stomach. Some people can't sleep at night. Some people just can't stop thinking about it. And I had this moment where it was almost like seeing this guy on stage, which he was much older than me. He was basically just complaining about millennials. Like I just saw, I was like, if this dude can do it.
Yeah, he didn't talk about the topic of millennials. He's like, these kids.
Yeah, now I'm kids
How old
these
was
days.
That guy,
right?
roughly? Do you know? Like
50 something, probably. Yeah. And I remember afterwards I ended up chatting with him and we had a really interesting exchange. I had done some research on millennials and he was like, you could do this. And for some reason, it took this guy who I don't even know who he is, literally to say, you could do it, for me to say, I can do it. And I think permission is such a big piece, especially when you're starting out, is to say, am I allowed?
Absolutely.
And I think as young people, we're taught to ask for permission. We raise our hands in class to go to the restroom, and we don't want to be seen as pushy at work, so we wait for a promotion to come by, and we wait for clients to find us on social media versus going out and actually prospecting. Right. Everything is waiting for permission to someone else because, again, ego. We don't want to seem pushy versus being more in love with helping people than in love with how we're seen by other people.
Right.
So I had this moment, and I remember leaving. I ended up meeting now one of my really close friends, this guy. I met him in an elevator, and we were talking, and he said, "What one word makes you smile?" Which is a very weird question to ask someone that you just met. And without thinking, I said generations. And he's like, "That's a really weird thing to say." And I kind of explained it, and he said, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm going to write a book." Like, without thinking. I didn't process through it. I didn't say I can't. I didn't question how it would happen. I just laid down the gauntlet. I challenged myself and said, I'm just going to do it. So 4 months later, I was back in DC at the time, finished my book, launched my book. A couple months later, I had started my company.
Yeah.
And even that whole exchange of starting my company was crazy because I had written my book. I'm at a networking event, and this woman comes up to me in DC. I know you lived in Washington, DC for a bit. They call it the DC Handshake. It's who are you and what do you do? So now, at the time, I didn't have any clients. I didn't have a website. I didn't have anything. But she asked me what I did. And instead of saying what I got paid for, which was a failing fundraiser, like I suck at fundraising, I said who I was. And so I said, I'm an expert in millennials. And she looked at me and she's like, "Oh, wow, we could really use you." And I was like, "Oh, where do you work?" Like thinking she'd, worked at some no-name company. And she was like, "The Navy." I was like, "Oh, like of the United States?" The Navy?
The Navy?
Yeah, and that was my first client. Yeah, and it just started this incredible relationship with
downhill from there.
Absolutely downhill. Yeah. I mean, so I've been on like 8 different naval bases. We work with the Air Force a lot. I mean, we worked with a lot of government agencies on generational leadership, understanding how different generations lead and want to be led. And it started this really crazy journey. But those 2 moments, I think, of first getting permission to pursue my purpose and secondarily saying who I was, not what I did, I think really was able to capture that phase of my life that I recognized that I couldn't stay where I was at and I could complain about it or I could do something with it.
Interesting. And so you've obviously done so much and you just told us how you got there. But what I'm curious of now is now that you're here where you're at, which you're very successful and I'm always inspired by the things that you're doing, how do you keep up this schedule handling all sorts of things, employees, speaking engagements, building new programs, all the things?
Sure. Yeah. I think that's kind of the burden and the blessing of being an entrepreneur or quote unquote being your own boss, which is so funny when people say that. Like, there's really no such thing as being your own boss. Like, I'm my own decision maker, but you have your own decisional faculties, whether you work for someone else or not. So it's just how you help people. Well,
I'll tell you this, because this is what my brother told me, who has his own business. And so when I started my own business, he said, "Got good news and bad news for you. The good news is you can't get fired. The bad news is maybe you should be."
That's awesome. That sounds like something your brother would say. Yeah. Or they say you'll have the best boss and the worst boss all at the same time. Right. And so I have a couple of different ways that I've kind of been able to navigate through everything and running 2 companies and writing a bunch of books and speaking and stuff. So the first thing with my schedule is I have every single day printed off. So I have time blocks for everything. So literally on my desk, if you walk into my office, there's a pile of 7 pieces of paper. Even my day off, I have literally planned of what I'm going to do that day. And I time block everything. So Mondays are my kind of admin days where I'm either creating content or writing content or getting caught up on things, going over our finances with our team, whatever needs to be taken care of. And then Tuesday through Friday is time blocked. So everything from sales to even when I'm going to send out emails, when I go to the gym, when I eat, everything is written out. And that's helpful because although I'm not a robot, I can still, take a call. Thank you. Take a call. You've still never seen me cry, so no one really quite knows. But I can take a call. I can be flexible. I can, do a podcast in the middle of the day. But when I get back to my desk, if I'm off at all, I look back at my schedule and I can immediately get back on it. So, hey, I had a sales call. No one showed up. How many times do you have something where people don't show up or it gets delayed and you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs, wasting 15 minutes or an hour? And so I have a go-to list of, hey, if this doesn't happen, here are the things that I need to get done. So it's just throwing it to first every single time, which has helped me so much be able to get the most out of my day. So that way I'm not just reacting to everybody else's schedule. I don't check my email first thing in the morning. I don't check it before 10 a.m. because there's nothing that urgent. People, if anyone needs to get a hold of me, they'll text me, they'll, do whatever they need to do.
Yeah.
So it's protecting my time so that way I can get more out of my day versus reacting to everybody else's agenda. I think has been one of the most important things I could do because whether it's traveling to meetings or responding to email or getting distracted on social media, I have time blocks for everything that if I am going to get distracted, if I want to watch YouTube videos while I eat my lunch, great. It's on my schedule that I've got 20 minutes or something that I can, watch a good cat video.
Right.
Everyone loves a good cat video.
Everybody needs a good cat video in their life. One thing that I find myself doing is I don't have time for something. And so I think, okay, I'm going to tackle this tomorrow. And then I don't have time for it the next day.
Uh-huh.
And I don't have to. And I was actually thinking about this today. I was like, if I don't get this done today, it doesn't happen tomorrow because tomorrow is booked.
Sure.
So a prioritization, I think, is super important. One thing I've found myself looking at with my young company is what are the things I'm doing that's making me money?
Yep.
Because I've been very blessed that a lot of people are reaching out and they're like, John, I want to talk to you about this. And will you do this? And will you do this? And I want to, let you know about this or learn more about your company. And I'm very thankful for that. But you can spend, drop something. But you can spend all day doing stuff that's actually not valuable for you at all.
But it feels like you're getting a lot of stuff done.
Yeah. Being busy is different than being productive.
And I think that that's the worst thing about having a to-do list is I have categories of things. So at the beginning of the week, I say, okay, here's in my life category, whether it's, buying my nephew a present or making vacation plans, that's in my life category. I'm not touching that during the day. I'll do it Wednesday night because I have my life time block.
Right.
And the same thing is with finance or sales or fulfillment or anything like that. And because it's so easy to either respond to everybody else's agenda, respond to everybody else's requests, and feel like you're doing a lot because you're simply just checking things off of this to-do list that isn't actually getting you closer to your goals.
Yeah, another part of it is rest, right? And one thing that I need a lot of rest. Days.
Beauty sleep.
Days. This doesn't do itself.
That's right.
But no, what I got caught up in early on.
How many hours of sleep do you get a night?
So I'm somebody who needs a lot of sleep. So I need 8 hours.
But 8 hours isn't a lot.
Like minimum 8 hours.
Okay.
I've started.
So you're like a hibernator. Like you're just going to wake up 12 hours later if we just leave you on your own.
I wish.
Yeah.
Like back in the day when I was younger, I used to wake up at noon every weekend, and I was just like my roommates were like,
did he die?
Yeah, he's alive again, you know? But obviously now that I've matured greatly,
sure,
aged slightly, I wake up a lot earlier.
Yeah.
And the thing that I've been trying to get myself to do is go to bed earlier.
Sure.
Because I found I'm somebody who needs a little bit of urgency. And I've never categorized myself as a morning person, the guy who got up at noon, obviously. But I'm most effective in the morning. At night, I'm just not productive.
Sure.
And I know some people, especially in the design world, like they have their day job and then they do freelance at night and they're just cranking away all night. I'm just going to be wasting my time at night. And so what I've evaluated is like, let me work till 7:30 p.m. and let me have a little bit of like a couple hours of just I'm looking at funny stuff on Twitter or I'm watching the football game or I'll go skateboarding or whatever. And then let me get up at 6 a.m. the next day and then like have my coffee and I'm just rearing to go. Yep. And then I can go till 7:30. But the first few weeks of my business, which was a few weeks ago, by the end of the week, I was exhausted.
Yep.
Because I was working every moment, every day. And I was talking to my coach because, I was like, there's not enough time in the day and I have all these things I need to do and I want to do it and everything. She said, John, different people have different schedules. And it's more important that your hours are productive and energized than just the amount of hours you work. And so while I think it's different for everybody,
sure,
because some people do only need 4 hours and some people do have the constant motor, but I've found that if I give myself more time to rest and sleep, I'm actually getting more done because my hours awake are more productive.
Yep.
So what is that like for you?
Yeah, I sleep 8 hours at least a night. And I think when I was younger, I think you try and see how far you can go on how little you have.
Sure.
So I still do that with the gas in my tank, which reminds me I need to get gas on our drive home. I'm like, oh yeah, I need to pick up some gas. I think that there was almost this challenge of, oh my gosh, like I could power through, but you get older and you're not, your body just doesn't work that way anymore.
And there's there's almost like a humble brag part of it. Like, oh, I work 12 hours a day. I work I'm on the grind. I'm a hustler. I'm an entrepreneur. And it's like, man, you're going to die young.
I know. It's absolutely not worth it at all. Yeah, I'm obsessed with longevity. Like I want to be here 126 years. I'm like, I got a lot of stuff to do. It's very specific. Yeah. And so it's like the sleep, like what I eat, like how I work out, everything's really focused on that. Because when you know your purpose and you know who it is that you want to help, you want to be around longer and you want to be healthy enough and have your faculties enough that you can be around longer. So yeah, I mean, rest is super important. Taking vacation days, like I'm doing a staycation this weekend, which I have never said anything more millennial in my entire life than I'm doing a staycation. But it's true. I just kind of noticed that we've been traveling a lot and I haven't had time to really evaluate. The book came out. It's been incredible success. Super, super stoked about it. But like, where am I in all of this? Like, how do I make sure that I'm going in the right direction and not just being kind of herded along, reacting to the next request or the next thing that's kind of coming up? So taking time to really focus on yourself. And it's not like you need a mental health day, like don't be dramatic, right. But I think that you're the only one who's going to really be able to, it's your body. You're the one who lives in it. So taking care of it, I think is super important. And I think changing the conversation around sleep and rest and relaxation and not making it like I hustle for 12 or 14 hours a day. And so then I crash. Like that doesn't help anybody. And I'm kind of over the whole like rise and grind hustle culture of entrepreneurship because I think that it's just a humble brag of I'm working hard, which everybody's working hard. Right. Not everyone is working smart. So if you have time to post about how you're hustling, you're not hustling. If you're talking about your grind, you're not really paying attention and actually helping people. You're just making it more about you than anything else. So I think that's something I've learned a lot through the entrepreneurial journey is just the hidden agenda of ego through everything and how we make it about ourselves rather than making it about other people. Yeah. And that's a dog you just keep feeding because it's just always going to come and rear its head in a different way. And again, I think when you become obsessed with helping people and you're like, I now know at the beginning of my company, it was all about me getting on stages, writing books, all of that. And it was fun. But I genuinely don't know whose life I helped. Like right now, I have so many people that I'm like, oh my gosh, I just met with Mukesh last week who said he took my program. He fed 680,000 people in India because of the principles that we taught him. The slums in India, crazy. Or like people who started companies that can help their kids go to college finally. Like I have faces that then I attach to the transformations that I've been able to provide. So that's what I think the real power of knowing your purpose and using your purpose is being obsessed with the transformation, the end result of helping people versus the journey of feeling like you're worthy of getting to the place of you get recognition and accolades for, what it is that you're hustling on.
So I love what you said about ego. I experience this a lot too, because I've had cameras pointed at me since I was 14 years old on a skateboard. And I mean, in high school, I had 7 different sponsors and big fish, small pond sort of a situation. And, I just got used to people paying attention to me and creating an image. And I remember I got off social media about 4 years ago, which you point out constantly. And a big thing for me to realize was, do I enjoy the things I'm doing if nobody else knows about it? And I had found myself previous to that doing a lot of cool things. I had some cool jobs, the feed was lit, as you millennials say. And
we don't say that.
Okay, great. Scratch that, production team. So, people were seeing me doing a lot of stuff that looked cool, and I was enjoying their validation of what I was doing rather than just enjoying what I was doing.
Sure.
And I got caught up in this like really crazy cycle of that. And so, especially when I no longer had Instagram and I would go skateboarding by myself at the skate park, it was a big perspective shift, because I was like, if I do a trick that is impressive and nobody sees it, do I still enjoy it, or am I only doing it for the validation of others? And it sounds like you've had a little bit of this experience as well. And I think what we've both realized is when you switch your perspective from yourself to other people,
Yep.
I think if you're always taking care of other people, you'll always be taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is people really appreciate that. And it comes through the authenticity. I've noticed posts on LinkedIn and stuff, when I was tentative about ramping up my LinkedIn content, because I was like, I don't want to just talk about myself all the time, and I don't want to look like somebody who's just wanting to promote myself. Yep. And as I realized what I can do with that, of course you want to point out some things about your business and promote yourself, but if the focus is on helping other people or recognizing other people, not only is that, I think, better accepted, but it's more gratifying.
Yeah. No, it absolutely is. I think, especially when you're starting out, I think people a lot of times pull back because they don't want to be seen as egotistical. They don't want to be seen for what they really are, which is, I think, kind of interesting, because we're like, well, you know, I don't want people to think that I'm only trying to push my own products or services, or I don't want to be a bad actor. Like, so many people tell me there are already so many people in the space who are selling stuff, and I don't want to seem pushy like them, or I don't want to, you know, sound like they do. I don't like how they do it. And so the very reason they should get into the industry is the very reason that they don't get into the industry.
Interesting. Yeah.
So they say, oh, well, there's so many bad actors, I don't want to get in. That's like saying there's so many bad coffee shops here, I shouldn't start a coffee shop. No, there's a market. If there's bad coffee, make some dang good coffee and do really well. So I think that a lot of times people have this even fear of success, where people are like, what's going to happen if I am successful? Because it changes. Yeah. Totally. It changes your world. It changes your dynamic. And I think what COVID's really taught me a lot is that how, as humans, we're so addicted to certainty and control. So I don't know what's going to happen next. And so I'm going to control you because I feel out of control. So I can't control whether or not my client's going to keep me, or I can't control whether or not my company's going to keep me, or whether or not the economy is going to recover, who's going to get elected. And so because I feel out of control, I'm going to seek control on top of others. And I think it's changed a lot of our society dynamics. I think it's changed our business dynamics. And I think when you recognize that as a person, to say, okay, why am I acting this way? Most likely the reason that you're being rude to your spouse or partner, you're reacting funny, or you're in a weird mood, it's because you feel out of control. And so start with yourself. Yeah. Because you're trying to control other people. Like, I love watching people in the airport. It's one of my favorite things to do. Now with the masks, it's even better. And so I've been flying a lot, and it's amazing seeing how people interact with other people, whether it's like yelling at someone else for putting a mask on. Like, really, would you really do that in any other time as yelling at someone, or judging people, or cutting someone off in line, trying to get like 2 seats ahead of them on the airplane? Like, dude, we're all going to get on. And I think as a society, and even just as individuals, on an individual level, we're all trying to seek control. And so get in control of yourself and your life, and you're not going to be as reactionary or even as disappointed. Like, the reason that you're disappointed in your relationships and in your clients, everything comes down to expectations. And I think that the reason that you are upset is because your expectations are probably inappropriate or unrealistic.
Yeah, everything comes down to expectations. What was a catapult into me deciding to do all this stuff was I applied for a job with an agency, and I for sure thought I was going to get it. Like, everything was pointing to getting hired, and then I didn't even get an interview. And it was such a gut punch, and I was like, what am I even going to do? You know, and then it resulted in people encouraging me to do this stuff. But it was all around the expectation of what I thought I was going to get. And that's very interesting about what can you the need for control, and then what can you control is literally yourself and nothing else. Sadly, a lot of people can't control that much or choose not to.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I think Seinfeld, I don't know if you've watched his latest stand-up or not, but he's this great...
I've seen everything else that he's done.
Yeah. So he's got this great stand-up on Netflix, but he talks about how ridiculous it is to put overweight people in Las Vegas with a buffet. And he's like, these people already have problems with self-control, and you're putting them now in a buffet.
Right.
And we're all kind of like that in some way or another.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We all have our
Fat
things.
people at a buffet.
So speaking of things, how's that for a segue?
That's perfect segue.
Harsh segue.
Uh-huh.
This guy used to work with at GameStop. He had this slide in his decks that was the greatest, and it said harsh segue. It had police on segways, like breaking up a riot.
I get it. Yeah.
It was incredible.
It's quite literal.
So speaking of police on segways, so tell us about what's coming next in your industry. Everybody who we have on, we love to have the opportunity to just pick your brain and give the audience an idea of what do they need to be aware of.
Sure.
Or, what is this next big thing happening that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, I speak a lot at conferences, and so in the personal development space too, I think everything has certainly been affected by COVID in different ways. And so
Right.
I think adaptability has been the kind of the superpower or the kryptonite of individuals and industries as a whole. And I think the conference business has completely changed forever because back to expectations, now people expect to be able to get the same kind of content or the same access to speakers in their jammies. Mm-hmm. And so getting people, I think it's going to change a lot of the dynamics of how organic relationships happen, business deals, innovation, because you can sit and learn from Zoom or from a computer from your home, but you're not necessarily going to be, number one, as engaged. And number two, you're not going to have those kind of organic conversations in the hallways or getting coffee in the morning. And
Right.
I think that I think that is really going to change the way that people learn as well. And so I think it's actually really going to hamstring people. But I mean, VR has completely changed the game. And I think that's been really good for industries. I mean, I work a lot with the military, and so they used to say, there's no way we're ever going to do anything on Zoom or anything virtually. It has to be in person. Put your phones away. Like I had to put my phone in a special box to be able to get onto most of these bases.
Wow. Yeah.
And because of COVID, now they're like, okay, great. Everyone's using their personal device. We've got a Zoom account, and it's completely changed. So I think it's actually proven a lot of these old dinosaur industries and conferences that they can change. And so I think that on the other side of it, I'm such an optimist, it's annoying. But on the other side of it, I think it's actually training people that they can change, even though they always said, they use that as an excuse.
Right.
Like, we're never going to change. We've always been this way. Well, always doesn't count anymore in a crisis.
True.
So I think that how people are able to adapt and change, I think is been really cool. And I'm really proud of a lot of industries. So the conference space, I don't know what it's going to look like. It's going to look a lot more virtual. It's going to have a lot more VR. Platforms are already coming out there, making it much more accessible and engaging. And so I don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I think that the personalization of a conference and personal development experience, like we're working on an assessment right now for the purpose factor of how do you find your purpose and how do you create a company around purpose and how do you create a career around purpose. Yeah. And so I think technology and the way that we are able to attach science to human innovation and human development, I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah, we did with Esports Trade Association. We had a virtual conference in September.
Yep.
And one of the most
I
valuable...
noticed you didn't ask me to speak.
Yeah, I didn't tap your expertise on
esports. Is that a next year?
Yeah, well, I wanted to build
it's
up
in
to
there.
it.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't want our top tier talent.
I'll put it on my calendar for next year.
Please.
Yes.
I'll send you an invite. Be on the lookout for it. Anyway, as I was saying, so we had this virtual conference in September. And, the most valuable thing about a conference, I think, is the in-person interaction. Because, you're going to learn a little bit from the speakers and stuff, but it's that nothing can replace that face-to-face moment. I've met people through, had a bunch of emails, then we go to dinner, and then it's like, oh my gosh, now we have a rapport.
Sure.
We have things we can laugh about, all the things. So we created virtual networking and virtual happy hours, and I was shocked how effective they were. But I think partially it was because this happened in September, not in May. And so I think people have had this time where they've experienced,
sure,
and they become a little bit used to interacting virtually. And I found personally, I mean, if I really want to get to know somebody who's a new contact, we're going to do a Zoom call. I want to see their face while they talk. If I'm not that interested, I'm just like, hit up my cell phone. I'll be playing full.
That explains a lot.
Every time we're on the phone.
That was that sound in the background.
And you're like, click. It's like, oh, there's John again, playing pool at his house. But yeah, I think a lot of the reason for that change that's coming is that people have been forced to experience it. Like in marketing, I'm a big believer that experiential marketing is going to really take off because people have been forced to be comfortable with it. And there's case studies are created. And now going forward, it's not, hey, do you want to do this new cool thing that you've never done before? It's, no, look at all the benefits of this thing. And now you know, or at least your competitor's doing it. And so I think that's going to be super interesting to see in the event space.
Yep.
And also to see, how many people are going to go to physical conferences and say, yeah, I'm going to go to the in person. How many are going to say, no, I'm going to stay home and Zoom for my jammies? Do you have a guess on that?
I think, so there's the whole innovation theory curve, which I'm sure that you've heard about, and like the early adopters and the late adopters and kind of everybody in between. And I think that there are plenty of people who are getting really tired of Zoom. The Zoom fatigue is real, that they're like, okay, one more Zoom meeting. I personally like how everyone started off like with a suit, like jacket on top, and now it's just digressed to like oversized sweatshirts and like, you know, holding babies in Zoom calls. Like everyone's just like
started in the sweatshirts.
Right.
Call me an early adopter.
That's what I was going to say, is you really set the trend. Thank you for that. And now I think everyone is just recognizing that like we work and we have a life, and it's not one or the other, but it's integrated. And I think that's been really nice. But I think that a lot of people are eager to get out and see people face to face. And I think that they just either don't feel safe. And so I think a lot of conferences and companies are now having to take extra precautions to make sure that people feel safe.
True.
But for those who do feel fine and safe and make sure that, you know, everything's, you know, hunky-dory, I think that there's going to be a huge resurgence. I mean, we're already starting to see in the travel space that travel's up, and people, I think, are becoming much more comfortable getting out of their homes. Whereas you're right, at the beginning of COVID, it was the sit and wait. Like, I'm not sure. You know, now it's the, you know, quote unquote new normal. And I think people are recognizing, hey, my life has to continue on. It's been 8 months, it's been 7 months, it's been 10 months, whatever it's been. And people need to, you know, their life has to keep going on. So pushing the pause button, I think, on 2020 isn't an option. I think some people have taken that option and they kind of woke up in the same place that they were maybe 10 months ago.
Yeah.
But I think for most of us recognizing going into it, I mean, we were really intentional. We're like, this is either a crisis or it's a gift. Like, that's it. There's just two different perspectives. So you can either see it as everything is, you know, I'm freaking out. Let's stop whatever we're doing and try and get back to normal. Or how can I see this as a gift and be thankful for a new season, a new opportunity? And kind of my mantra going into it was, I'm either going to consume or create. Yeah. And so I'm either going to consume media, entertainment, distractions, carbs, whatever that looks like. Maybe a little bit of that. Yeah, pretty much. I was like on like a mission to find the best tacos here in Dallas, and I'm pretty sure I found them.
Where are they, by the way?
My obsession with Velvet Taco is very real.
Yeah.
Very real. I don't want to talk about it. They should sponsor your podcast, by the way.
Agreed. If you could make that intro for me, I'd love it.
I'll see what I can do. Yeah. I'm having them sponsor my life at this point. Or I could create, like I could consume or I could create. Yeah. And that creation has led to a new company, new books, new opportunities. And 2020 has been our best year. And I think very few people have been able to say that, but it was a mindset at the beginning. It wasn't because we saw our income coming and we're like, oh yeah, this is perfect. We're making money off of this. Like we weren't selling masks. Okay. If you're in the mask industry, good on you. Right. That's not what we were doing. We're a live events and training company. Right. Like I have to show up in person to make money. So we had to adjust and change and adapt. And I think that the industry overall has done that. But now we've hit a plateau, and I think it's time for us to innovate again, because Zoom isn't enough. Yeah. We now need to make it more interactive.
Right. Well, I'm a big believer. I love the mindset thought of that. I'm a big believer in seasons of life. And what was eye-opening to me, I was talking to a friend a while back. We were just talking about, different situations of life and how they have pros and cons. One thing he said is if you're not happy in this season, you're not going to be happy in the next season.
Sure.
But every season.
But no one thinks that, though. It's always like the grass is greener.
Exactly.
And I think I posted, because you follow me on Instagram, I posted that sometimes the grass is greener because it's fake.
AstroTurf.
And I think, which is a new thing, apparently. I don't live in a house, so I don't know. You tell me. People are getting AstroTurf in your community.
I guess the front yard that's managed by the HOA. Quite lovely.
But I think that so many people think that is, when I get this job or when I get married or when you attach happiness to a future date that doesn't ever come.
Agreed. And I would say more importantly, or just as importantly, there's unique pros and cons to every situation. They're just different. So when I joined, it was funny because I was working for PRG and I got hired about 6 months before shutdown, the world's largest event producer, right? And so I was
not affected at all.
Yeah, only 90% of revenue, roughly. But I was so happy to travel, and people were like, John, you're working too much, you're traveling too much. And I said, I'm going to travel as much as I can while I enjoy it, so I don't have to travel as much later. No, I didn't know it'd be only 6 months of travel. But the other part of my thing with COVID was I started getting invited onto a few podcasts, and I said, I'm going to try to just get myself out there as a thought leader on all these podcasts. And I ended up doing about 15 of them. Mm-hmm. And then obviously ended up doing my own, and the company and all of those things. So yeah, no, I'm a big believer that, everything is an opportunity. It's just sometimes those opportunities are less obvious. You just have to search for them.
Yep.
Well, thank you for taken the opportunity to join us on the DLC Drop podcast. Yeah. Is there anything you would like to plug, or where can people find you?
Yeah, so our big thing is getting the book out there. I mean, we're super, super passionate about helping people find their purpose. So if you're kind of in transition, trying to figure out what's next, just not quite sure, about that clarity piece of your life, pick up a copy of The Purpose Factor. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, or at purposefactorbook.com.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for joining us. I know our audience is going to love this episode. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Well, that was another great episode of the DLC Drop, this time with our guest, Gabrielle Bosche. It was so interesting listening to her perspective on transforming others and how we can do that through our work. Also, her book, The Purpose Factor, is definitely recommended, so make sure to pick that up. Thank you for listening to the DLC Drop podcast. This podcast is part of the Esports Futuri Podcast Network and produced by Innovation Media Enterprises. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast channel and leave us a review.